The grand mansion on Rosewood
I don't
Avenue was
think it
alive that
pays to
evening.
do with this guy
Expensive cars
now.
lined the driveway, the warm glow of chandeliers spilled from the tall windows, and laughter echoed across the marble porch. Inside, the elite of the city gathered for an elegant charity gala hosted by one of the wealthiest families in town, the Harpers. James Harper, the patriarch, had built his empire from scratch. His sharp blue suit and polished shoes reflected not just his wealth but also his relentless ambition. Every guest admired him, some envied him, and many feared him. His reputation for being hard, unyielding, and intolerant of mistakes was well known. Standing beside him was his wife, Veronica, regal in her crimson gown. Their guests, wrapped in silk and jewels, mingled and whispered about donations, business deals, and the latest scandals. For James, it was more than just a charity event, it was another display of power. But fate had a different plan that evening, one that would not unfold in the ballroom but right outside its doors. Dash dash dash. The maid and the boy. Maria Alvarez adjusted the yellow gloves on her hands, feeling out of place amid the extravagance. She worked as a maid in the Harper household, scrubbing floors, polishing silverware, and taking care of the endless chores no one else wanted to do. Tonight, she wasn't supposed to be near the event. She had been asked only to check the back garden and make sure the service doors were locked. Yet, as she walked past the front, she noticed a little boy in bright red pajamas standing barefoot on the cold stone tiles. It was young Ethan Harper, James and Veronica's only son. His big brown eyes scanned the crowd nervously. Maria's heart skipped. Señorito Ethan, what are you doing here? You should be inside. The boy tugged at her sleeve, urgency shining in his eyes. He leaned in close, his small lips brushing her ear. I need to tell you a secret, he whispered. Maria froze, sensing the weight in his trembling voice. She knelt down so he could whisper again. The boy's words made her eyes widen. She looked at him, then at the grand doors, then back at him. And at that very moment, James Harper stepped outside. His sharp eyes caught sight of the scene, his son whispering to the maid as though sharing the deepest truth. Shock washed over his face, his lips parting as if the ground beneath him had shifted. Guests inside began to notice too. They gathered near the tall windows, their curious eyes locked on the scene. What could a child possibly say to a maid that left the mighty James Harper stunned? That whisper would change everything. Dash dash dash. Seeds of kindness. To understand why Ethan trusted Maria with his secret, one had to travel back months before this night. Maria had come to America from Mexico, carrying nothing but hope and a faded photograph of her mother. She found work at the Harper mansion because she needed to send money home for her younger siblings. The job was exhausting, but Maria never complained. It was Ethan who first broke the invisible wall between employer and servant. One rainy afternoon, when thunder frightened the little boy, Maria found him hiding under a table. She sat beside him, humming a lullaby her mother used to sing. The melody calmed him, and from that day forward, Ethan clung to Maria whenever his parents were too busy with meetings and galas. She taught him how to fold paper boats, how to count in Spanish, and how to see magic in small things, a butterfly landing on a flower, a rainbow after the rain, or the kindness of strangers. Maria never realized how much these small acts mattered until Ethan whispered his secret. Dash dash dash. The secret. Papa is always too busy, Ethan had whispered that night. He doesn't listen. But I heard something. Someone is stealing from him. I didn't know who to tell. I trust you, Maria. Maria's heart thudded. A child shouldn't carry such a burden. Yet his innocence had caught something real. Ethan had overheard one of James's closest business partners plotting a betrayal. The irony was painful. James Harper, who trusted no one, had ignored his son but was saved because the boy confided in a maid. When James heard this truth spill from Maria's lips moments later, he was shaken to his core. Not just because of the betrayal, but because his own child had chosen a housemaid to be the guardian of his fears. Dash dash dash. A father's awakening. That night, the gala continued inside, but James couldn't focus. His mind kept replaying the image of Ethan whispering to Maria. He realized he had been absent, not just as a father but as a man who had forgotten kindness. Maria's courage to bring Ethan's words to him, despite her fear of being dismissed, stirred something deep. She had no obligation, yet she protected his son, his family, his empire. For the first time, James Harper saw beyond the uniform, beyond the yellow gloves. He saw Maria's humanity, her dignity, and her quiet strength. Dash dash dash. The ripple of kindness. The next weeks transformed everything. James investigated and indeed uncovered a betrayal within his circle. The empire was saved, not by his power, but by his son's trust in a kind-hearted maid. He began to change. Slowly at first. He spent more time with Ethan, listening to his small stories, joining him in paper boat races in the garden pond. Veronica, too, softened, realizing how much their child had needed their presence. Maria's life changed as well. James and Veronica offered to sponsor her siblings' education back in Mexico. She was given opportunities to study in the evenings, something she had once thought impossible. But more than material help, Maria was given respect. She was no longer invisible. At dinners, she was asked about her opinions. At gatherings, Ethan proudly introduced her as his best friend. Dash dash dash. The whisper that lived on. Years later, Ethan grew into a compassionate young man. At his graduation speech, he shared a story. When I was little, I whispered a secret to someone I trusted. That whisper not only saved my family but taught me the most important lesson of life, that kindness can change the world. And sometimes, the ones we overlook are the ones who save us. Maria, sitting in the front row, wept silently. James and Veronica held hands, their eyes misty. The empire was still strong, but the real legacy was something far greater, a family healed by kindness. Dash dash dash. Conclusion. The world often teaches us to measure worth by wealth, status, or power. But in the quiet exchange between a child and a maid, a truth shone brighter than all the chandeliers in the Harper mansion: kindness, trust, and compassion are the true treasures. One whisper, one act of trust, and a lifetime of change.